Ever feel like time is just vanishing? Or maybe wonder what really makes for a rich life, beyond the career stuff.
Yeah, that constant feeling of not enough time.
Exactly. Well, you sent us some really fascinating material, and we've been digging deep into it. We want to bring you some insights that might honestly reshape how you think.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take your sources, look closely, and pull out the key ideas, hopefully efficiently, and maybe even make it a bit fun.
Trying our best.
So today, we're tackling these big concepts you highlighted: time wealth and social wealth. We're drawing on Bloom's ideas, some data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and even some historical bits.
It's amazing, really, how these two things, our time and our connections, are fundamental, like the absolute bedrock of a good life.
Totally, we're not just talking about, filling your calendar or having lots of contacts.
No, it's much deeper. It's about the essence of living well.
Okay, so let's dive right into time wealth. Bloom puts it, well, pretty starkly, how limited our time really is.
Right. The numbers are kind of sobering.
Think about it. If you're, say, 20 years old, living to 80 means you've got roughly 2 billion seconds left. Sounds like a lot, but
But then if you're 50, it's down to about a billion. Suddenly, yeah, each second feels a bit heavier, doesn't it?
it really does. And the example of Warren Buffett, incredibly wealthy, lived a long life.
But even he couldn't buy one extra second.
Right. And Bloom mentioning Charlie Munger passing away recently just hammers that home. It's the one resource money absolutely cannot buy.
Makes you think how Buffett must view his time, like an hour wasted doing nothing. For him, that's probably like watching thousands of dollars just poof, gone.
Yeah, it definitely reframes things for us regular folks, too. So from this idea, Bloom builds out his 3 pillars of time wealth.
Okay.
First, just being aware that time is finite. Really aware. Second, focusing your energy on what actually matters most, the high-impact stuff.
Makes sense.
And third, having or gaining control over how you actually spend that time. Let's unpack that first one. Awareness.
Okay, the awareness piece. This is where some history comes in, which I found fascinating.
Yeah.
The ancient Romans, right? When a general won a huge victory, had a triumph parade.
They'd have someone whispering in their ear.
Exactly. Someone whispering, remember, you are just a mortal. Remember that you will eventually die.
Wow. Talk about a reality check.
Right. It wasn't meant to be morbid, but to ground them, to stop them thinking they were invincible gods just because they won a battle.
It makes you wonder who needs that reminder today.
Hmm.
Maybe all of us, a little bit.
Probably. How do we keep that perspective ourselves, without meeting a Roman slave whispering at us?
Well, Bloom suggests this tool, the Memento Mori calendar. It sounds intense, but it's actually quite simple.
Okay, what is it?
Imagine a grid, 80 rows for 80 years. Each row has 52 dots, one for each week.
Right.
And every week that passes, you
Yeah.
color in 1 dot.
So it's a visual. You literally see your life filling up or running out, depending on how you look at it.
Exactly. It makes time feel tangible, not abstract. It's right there on the page.
I can see how that would work. It's simple, direct, forces you to confront it. It could really shift how you think about your weeks, make you more intentional.
And that leads into some interesting hard data. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, since about 2003, has been tracking how Americans spend time and, crucially, who they spend it with.
Oh, yeah. The American Time Use Survey. Some really telling trends in there.
For sure. Like time with parents and siblings. Peaks when you're a kid, obviously.
Right.
Then, bam, drops off sharply after age 20.
Which makes sense. You leave home, start your own life.
Right. But then you look across the whole lifespan.
And the picture keeps changing. Time with your own kids, if you have them, peaks in your 30s and 40s. Maybe 4 hours a day on average then.
But then it drops fast after the kids turn 50 or so, down to maybe an hour. They're grown, independent.
And time with friends? That's another interesting one. It seems to just steadily decrease after age 18.
Yeah, continuously. It makes you wonder, what causes that? Life gets busy. We don't prioritize it.
Probably a mix of things. Societal pressures, work, family responsibilities, individual choices too, of course.
What doesn't decrease, though, at least later in life, is time with a partner. That tends to go up, especially after retirement.
Which really highlights how important that choice is, who you partner with.
Definitely. And 2 other things stood out. We basically lose touch with work colleagues after retiring. Poof, gone.
Yeah, those work friendships often don't translate.
And the amount of time spent alone, that consistently increases, especially after retirement.
So this data, it really paints a picture of shifting social circles. Less time with friends as we age, more time alone.
Yeah,
It suggests you really need to be intentional about nurturing the connections that matter long term.
absolutely. Which brings us to a really poignant point Bloom makes about the last times.
Oh, yeah, that hit hard.
He tells this story, right? About a walk with his dad on some bridge, the Songwo River Highway Bridge, when he was a kid. Seemed totally ordinary.
Just a walk.
But looking back, it was the last time they did that specific thing together. And you never know when those last times are happening.
That's the thing. The last time you laugh uncontrollably with your siblings, the last bedtime story you read to your kid, the last time you just hang out with a certain friend, it's usually unmarked at the time.
It makes the present moment feel incredibly precious.
Yeah.
Be there,
Yeah.
because you just don't know.
It connects really well to that ancient Greek idea of two types of time.
Chronos and Kairos.
Exactly. Chronos is just the clock ticking, quantitative, 1 minute after another, flowing, relentless.
Like water through your fingers.
Yeah. But Kairos, that's different. That's the quality of time, those special moments, the meaningful ones, the ones you remember.
So the goal is more Kairos, less wasted Chronos.
Pretty much.
Right.
Minimize the trivial Chronos, maximize the significant Kairos. How do we stop just getting through the day and actually experience more Kairos?
And that's where Bloom critiques things like the 996 work schedule. 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. He suggests that's probably mostly Chronos, just hours put in. Maybe not much lasting impact, especially when you think about, say, a child's memory.
Yeah.
What do they remember?
Probably the parent who wasn't there, not the extra hours logged at the office. It's a powerful point about the hidden costs.
So, okay, if we get that Kairos is valuable, why do we waste so much time? Why are we stuck in Chronos? Bloom points to a couple of big reasons.
Okay.
One is FOMO, fear of missing out. It makes us passively tag along, makes it hard to take the lead on what we actually want or need to do.
Yeah, you end up spreading yourself thin, not really committing.
And the other big one, distractions. Just the constant barrage of modern life, plus this thing called attention residue.
Ah, I know this one. When you switch tasks, your brain doesn't fully switch, right? Part of it is still thinking about the last thing.
Exactly. So you're never fully focused on the new task. It drains your cognitive energy, makes multitasking way less efficient than we think.
The digital age just makes this so much worse. Notifications, emails, social media, sustained focus is like a superpower now.
Which leads perfectly into Bloom's principles for getting our time wealth back. The first one is focus,
Yeah.
attention.
Simple but hard.
He uses the analogy of sunlight. Diffused, it's just warmth, but focus it with a magnifying glass.
And you can start a fire. Real impact.
Right. And he brings up Cal Newport's deep work here. Newport argues that in this distracted world, the ability to concentrate deeply is becoming rarer and therefore much more valuable.
Totally agree. Deep work is where the real breakthroughs happen, the meaningful creation. It's a skill worth cultivating.
Okay, second principle, do only the most important things. Be ruthless about it.
Easier said than done.
Yeah. But he shares this great story about Warren Buffett and his pilot. Mike, you heard this one?
I think so. Tell me again.
Buffett tells Mike, list your top 25 life goals, everything you want to achieve.
Okay, big list.
Then circle the top 5, the absolute most important ones.
Right, focus on those.
But here's the kicker. Buffett asks, what about the other 20? Mike says, well, they're still important. I'll work on them when I can.
And Buffett said.
Buffett says, no, you got it wrong. Those 20 are now your avoid at all cost list.
Wow.
They're the things that are interesting enough to distract you, but not important enough to deserve your core focus. Avoid them completely.
It's intense. Prioritization by subtraction. Don't just know what to do, know what not to do. Takes discipline.
For sure. So, okay, how do we actually do this? Let's get practical. Methods for controlling time.
Yes, please. Frameworks are helpful.
One classic is the Eisenhower matrix. From the 7 habits of highly effective people, you know this. Urgent versus important.
Right, the 4 quadrants.
Quadrant 1, important ADD, urgent. Crises, deadlines. Got to do these now, but ideally you want fewer of them.
Yeah, living in crisis mode is exhausting.
Quadrant 2, important but not urgent. This is the magic quadrant. Exercise, learning, building relationships, strategic planning. Where we should spend most of our time.
The stuff that builds long-term value but doesn't scream for attention right now.
Exactly. Quadrant 3, urgent but not important.
Yeah.
Lots of interruptions fall here. Emails, some calls, other people's minor issues. Delegate these if you can.
The busy work trap.
And quadrant 4, not urgent A and D, not important time wasters, mindless scrolling, pointless meetings, stuff you should just eliminate.
Cut it out
The
ruthlessly.
matrix gives you a clear way to decide, and Bloom adds a nice touch. Notice how you feel after doing something. If you feel energized, happy, fulfilled, probably important.
That's a good gut check. Does this activity drain me or fuel me?
He also mentions other scheduling tricks, like doing your top 3 tasks first thing, or time-locking scheduling specific chunks for specific work.
The main idea is being proactive, not reactive.
Okay.
Designing your day instead of letting it happen to you.
Exactly. And a huge part of that is learning to say NO, which connects to Parkinson's law.
Work expands to fill the time available.
Yep. Give yourself all day for a 1-hour task. It'll somehow take all day. So saying no protects your time. Bloom offers some criteria. For personal stuff, ask, if I had to do this right now, this very minute, would I? If the answer is meh, maybe it's a no.
That cuts through procrastination excuses.
And for professional things, it's even tougher. Does it exactly match your top priorities? And this is key. Would you still do it if it took twice the effort and only gave half the results you expect?
Oof, that's a high bar. Filters out a lot of maybes.
It's about protecting that core focus. And finally, Bloom talks about creating a sense of ceremony around focused work.
Ceremony, like rituals.
Kind of. Routines that signal to your brain, okay, it's deep work time now. Breaking tasks down helps too. He describes his own routine.
Yeah.
Involves all 5 senses.
What?
Like tactile,
Yep.
maybe a walk first or even cold water, taste, black coffee, vision, looking out a window at greenery, hearing, classical music,
Yeah.
smell, scented wood.
Wow, he really sets the stage.
The point isn't you have to do that, but find your ritual. Take focused work seriously. Create the conditions for concentration.
It's about intentionality again, signaling to yourself that this time is important.
So wrapping up time wealth, the big takeaway is time's limitedness is what makes it valuable. It's what pushes us to seek those meaningful kairos moments.
It's like that Achilles quote from Troy he mentions.
Yeah. The gods envy humans because we're mortal. Every moment matters because it won't come again. It's beautiful because it ends.
It's a powerful way to think about it. Cherish the time because it's finite.
Okay, let's shift gears. Second big theme, social wealth. Our relationships.
Right. Equally important, maybe even more so in some ways.
Bloom admits he was a bit skeptical about this initially. Maybe focus more on individual stuff, achievement.
A common perspective, especially early in careers.
But he came around to see relationships not just as like helpful tools, but as the goal, the point of it all in many ways.
It makes sense from an evolutionary perspective too, doesn't it? Our big brains likely evolved partly to handle complex social groups. We are fundamentally social creatures.
He even mentions Adler, from the courage to be disliked, how all our problems and all our happiness ultimately stem from relationships.
It's a bold claim, but there's a lot of truth there.
And then there's the Harvard study. This thing is incredible. Started in 1938, still going, tracking Harvard grads and guys from poor Boston neighborhoods.
The Grant study and the Gluck study, yeah. Looking for the keys to a happy, healthy life.
And the #1 predictor, clear winner. Not money, not fame, not IQ.
Strong relationship?
Bingo. Good, supportive relationships. They found that your satisfaction with your relationships at age 50 was a better predictor of your physical health at age 80 than your cholesterol levels at 50.
That's staggering, isn't it? It shows just how deeply our social connections impact our physical well-being, not just mental.
It really makes you stop and think. Bloom asks this simple question. If you were in crisis, middle of the night, who could you call?
Yeah.
If you can easily name a few people, you're probably not truly lonely. If you struggle, that's a red flag.
It's a good, quick diagnostic for your support system.
He tells a story about his grandfather in India, how he chose where to build their house, specifically because his wife, the grandmother, had close friends nearby.
That's real foresight, understanding the long-term value of community.
Totally. And it proved crucial later, after the men in those families passed away. The women had each other. That network was vital.
It's a beautiful example of intentionally building social wealth.
And more recently, he saw his own grandmother's health decline during the COVID lockdowns, mainly because she couldn't see her friends.
Oh, man, yeah. That isolation was brutal, especially for older people.
It just hammered home again. Connection isn't a nice to have, it's fundamental. Relationships are the goal, not just a tool.
So true. Okay, so if it's that important, how do we cultivate it, this social wealth?
Bloom uses a tree analogy.
Yeah.
Social wealth has 3 parts: depth, breadth, and status.
Okay, like roots, branches, and maybe how tall the tree stands.
Something like that. Depth is the foundation, the roots. These are your truly deep connections. Family, closest
The
friends.
people you'd call at 3 a.m., the ones who'd be at your funeral, no question.
Exactly those people. It's not a huge number, usually.
Quality over quantity for depth.
Right. And these deep relationships, they need ongoing interaction. They don't just maintain themselves. And interestingly, going through hard times together can actually make them stronger.
Shared struggle builds bonds. Makes sense.
He says there are 3 key ingredients for cultivating this depth.
Okay, what are they?
Honesty, being real, sharing your true self, including the messy bits, the vulnerabilities.
That takes courage, but builds trust.
Support, being there for each other, practically and emotionally, especially when things are tough. Reliability,
Mutual support, yeah.
and shared experiences, just doing life together. The good stuff, the bad stuff, the mundane stuff, building a history. We went through that together.
Honesty, support, shared experiences. That feels right. That's what makes those bonds deep.
And Bloom apparently has a way to evaluate these deep relationships, looking at how often you interact, and also their general attitude towards you. Like, are they supportive, critical?
What a relationship audit.
Yeah, sounds like it. He uses a 2-dimensional chart for it. Unfortunately, the source material we had kind of cuts off there, so we don't have the full details of his chart.
Huh, okay.
Yeah.
But the principle is clear. Actively think about the quality and frequency of your most important connections. Don't just let them drift.
Exactly. Be intentional about nurturing that depth.
Makes total sense. Assess and invest in those core relationships.
So let's try and wrap this up. We've gone through time wealth. Really, understanding time is limited, focusing, prioritizing, saying no, being intentional,
Getting control of your chronos to make space for kairos.
and then social wealth, seeing relationships not just as useful but as central to a good life, focusing on depth through honesty, support, shared experiences.
And acknowledging the other aspects, too. The breadth and status, even though we didn't get into the details from Bloom on those.
What really stands out is how linked these two are, isn't it?
Totally. How you spend your time directly impacts your relationships. And strong relationships make your time feel richer, more meaningful. They feed each other.
You can't really optimize one without considering the other. They're two sides of the same coin for a fulfilling life.
Absolutely.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on, connecting both themes. Considering that your time is finite and your relationships are profoundly important, what's one small change, just one thing you could do differently, maybe even starting today, to invest more intentionally in what truly matters most to you?
Good question to ponder.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. If you found this discussion useful, maybe learned something new, definitely hit that subscribe button. We do these deep dives regularly, exploring valuable ideas.
We appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.